When Hungarian Prime Minister Péter Magyar ousted longtime leader Viktor Orbán in April in a landslide election victory, hundreds of thousands of Hungarians took to the streets to celebrate the end of Orbán's 16-year rule. Less than 2 months later, things couldn't really be going much better for Magyar. His centrist TISA party continues to rocket up the polls. He successfully unlocked nearly all Hungary's frozen EU funds, and he's now pursuing an ambitious constitutional reform plan to remove Orbán loyalists from key state positions, including the presidency, which could potentially lead to new presidential election in the coming months. So in this video, we'll take a look at Magyar's first 8 weeks in government and explain why it's going so well. Recent elections in Denmark, Slovenia, Bulgaria and Hungary have shaken up the state of European politics, with major new trends emerging. We dissect these elections in the latest issue of our magazine, as well as explaining what's changing in Europe. That's just one of 80 pages in the magazine though, because as always there's more to Too Long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. Let's start with a recap of Magyar's rise to power. On the 12th of April, Hungary, a Central European country of 9.6 million people, voted to oust its longtime Prime Minister Viktor Orbán in what was probably the most watched European election of recent years. The election was won by the centre-right TISA, or Respect and Freedom Party, led by Péter Magyar, who promised to root out corruption in Hungarian institutions and basically clean up Hungarian politics after 16 years of Orbán rule. For context, Magyar was a former diplomat and Fidesz official who quit the party in early 2024 after a political scandal. Orbán's government had been accused of covering up child sex abuse at a children's home, leading to nationwide outrage and forcing Hungary's then president and Orbán's justice minister to resign. Magyar then quit Fidesz and went on a media spree, repeatedly accusing Orbán's government of corruption and cronyism. Magyar then joined the TISA party, a pre-existing but little-known centrist big tent party that was formed back in 2021, catapulting it into the spotlight. Thanks to Magyar's newfound stardom, and despite relatively few resources, TISA immediately began to rise in the polls, winning nearly 30% of the vote at the June 2024 European elections. By late 2024, TISA had overtaken Fidesz in the national opinion polls, and continued to rise throughout 2025. Opening up a steady 10-point lead over Fidesz. Then, at Hungary's April 2026 election, TISA pulled off a massive victory, winning a parliamentary supermajority, specifically 138 out of 199 seats, compared to 55 for Fidesz and 6 for the far-right Our Homeland movement. Addressing crowds in Budapest after the results, Magyar said Hungary had been liberated from the Orbán regime, comparing it to the Hungarian Revolution in 1848 and the 1956 uprising against the Soviet Union. Since taking office in early May, TISA has rocketed up even further in the polls, with Magyar having already secured a huge diplomatic and economic win, namely an agreement for the release of 16.4 billion euros of Hungarian EU funds that were frozen under Orbán due to concerns over the rule of law. This week, Magyar's government also announced that it will seek to change Hungary's constitution to allow for the removal of Orbán's president, potentially paving the way for a direct presidential election. So why are things going so well for Magyar? Well, we think it's largely down to 4 things. First, Magyar's own popularity. Second, the fast pace of his reforms. Third, Hungary's improved relationship with the EU. And fourth, the obvious fact that it's still very early in Magyar's honeymoon period. First up is Magyar himself. As we mentioned earlier, Magyar catapulted TISA into the spotlight after joining the party, largely because of his status as an outspoken former Fidesz insider. Magyar is also viewed as a lot more charismatic than Orbán, and has built a connection with the Hungarian electorate. His former Fidesz credentials have also given legitimacy to his claims of corruption, justifying his ongoing reform drive. This brings us on to the second reason, the fast pace of Magyar's reforms. Even before being sworn in as Hungary's Prime Minister in late April, Magyar had already begun meeting with senior EU officials in Brussels in an attempt to reset relations with the bloc. Last week, Magyar agreed a deal with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for the release of nearly all EU recovery and cohesion funds earmarked for Hungary, which had been frozen under Orbán, provided that Magyar's government meets certain conditions. This was a significant breakthrough, Not only is this a sizable amount, equivalent to 13% of Hungary's GDP, but it's also a testament to Magyar's diplomatic skills and deep commitment to fundamental reform. At the same time, Magyar has also pledged an overhaul of Hungary's tax regime, including a wealth tax on assets above 5 billion forints, or around £10 million, along with other measures targeting Hungary's oligarchs, such as an end to tax exemptions for trusts. Moreover, on Monday, Magyar pledged to amend Hungary's constitution to allow for the removal of the Fidesz president, Tamás Szujok, who was appointed by Orbán in 2024. For context, a few days after Tisza's election victory, Magyar posted a photo on social media standing next to Szujok, urging him to resign and calling him unworthy of representing the unity of the Hungarian nation. However, Szujok has consistently refused to resign, saying on his Facebook page that the constitutional crisis that will follow is going to deepen the divisions in society and harm the reputation of Hungary's democracy. Similarly, Fidesz has called Magyar's plan an unlawful ultimatum, arguing that Szujok's legal mandate runs until 2029. But since Tisza has more than the two-thirds of parliamentary seats needed to amend Hungary's constitution, Magyar's plan is technically legal, and he has instructed lawmakers to begin the, quote, necessary procedures, which wouldn't just target the president, but also other state leaders appointed by Orbán. This process is expected to take around a month, and could lead to fresh presidential elections in Hungary if that's what the parliament decides. The third reason for Magyar's success is Hungary's improved relationship with the EU. Unlike Orbán, the EU's biggest internal disruptor, who repeatedly used Hungary's veto to block EU aid packages to Ukraine, Magyar's Tisza party belongs to the European Parliament's centre-right European People's Party, or EPP, and Magyar has also signalled that he won't block future EU aid to Ukraine. According to a report by the European Council on Foreign Relations, published in April, 77% of Hungarian voters supported EU membership, while 68% wanted at least some adjustments in Hungary's approach to it. As such, Magyar's actions have been viewed positively by both the EU, with von der Leyen praising him for pushing through what she called long overdue reforms within just a few weeks, and also by Hungarian voters, given Tisza's sustained polling rise even beyond its election result. The final reason things are going well for Magyar is that it's only been a couple of months since he took office, and he's clearly still enjoying a political honeymoon period. Around the time of the election, there was some scepticism, especially from more left-leaning Hungarians, that Magyar might not ultimately be that different to Orbán, given that he was a member of Fidesz himself for a long time. However, so far, Magyar has largely kept his critics at bay, as it looks like he's serious about reforming Hungarian politics. The latest issue of our magazine, Too Long, is out now, and if you want our best value ever, subscribing and using the code SUMMER26 gets you your first copy for as cheap as £4.99, as well as 20% off as long as you stay subscribed. I actually told you about one of the articles in this edition of the magazine at the start of this video, but this issue's also jam-packed with other content from all around the world. Obviously, the headline section is our rundown of Trump's wars around the world, discussing all of the different countries and regions which have faced Trump's military wrath, going nation by nation through the timeline, and reaching the ultimate question, has Trump launched a modern holy war? From there, we dive into our regional sections, starting with the UK, where we unpack the results of the recent May elections, take a look at the UK's odd foreign posture, and discuss whether Britain has become ungovernable. Then in the EU section, we discuss how Russia's sphere of influence is fading, why Europe's energy transition isn't what you expect, and also look at the Euro's missing members. Finally, in the global section, we discuss if we're seeing echoes of the First World War, what's next for Iran, as well as what really came from the Gen Z protests we saw emerging last year. But that's not even everything. With this 80-page issue, our joint longest ever, there's even more to read than I've even been able to mention here. So click the link in the description to learn more and grab your copy of Too Long today.